The NASCAR Cup Series garage has not felt this tense in years. And the reason comes down to one driver, one team, and one stretch of racing that has rewritten the record books before the season even hits its midpoint. Tyler Reddick has done something in 2026 that almost no driver in the history of this sport has ever done. And instead of just celebrating it, the garage is fracturing over it. 4 wins in the first 6 races. Let that land for a second. Not 4 wins across an entire season. Not 4 wins across 2 years. 4 wins in 6 races: Daytona, Atlanta, Circuit of the Americas, and Darlington, before most teams have even figured out their setup for the year. According to NASCAR Insights, that makes Reddick only the 3rd driver ever to reach 4 wins in the first 6 races of a Cup Series season, joining Dale Earnhardt in 1987 and Bill Elliott in 1992. That is not a stat that gets manufactured. That is one of the rarest early season achievements in the 75-plus year history of this sport. What makes this start genuinely different from a typical hot streak is the variety of tracks involved. Daytona is a survival race built on drafting chaos and split-second decisions. Atlanta is a high-speed, draft-heavy battle where momentum and pack position decide everything. Circuit of the Americas demands road course precision, rhythm, and a completely different mental approach than any oval on the schedule. And then there is Darlington, a track so unforgiving it has been called too tough to tame for decades. Each of those venues tests a different skill set. Reddick won all 4. That is not luck. That is command. After more modest finishes at Phoenix and Las Vegas, there was at least some reason to wonder whether the pace had cooled off a little bit. But instead of slipping, Reddick answered with a calm, controlled, veteran-type performance at Darlington that silenced those questions immediately. He managed tire wear, worked through traffic, stayed composed, and executed late when it mattered most. That Darlington win may have said the most about him, not because it was the flashiest victory of his run, but because it came at the hardest track on the schedule, under the most pressure when everyone was watching to see if he would crack. The team behind all of this is 23XI Racing, co-owned by Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. This is not a small operation that stumbled into a hot stretch. 23XI has been building competitive infrastructure for several seasons now, and the number 45 car that Reddick drives has been engineered specifically to perform across different track types. Still, even for a team trending upward, this level of dominance has turned heads, and not just in an admiring way. Here is where the story shifts. After Reddick's win at Darlington, the mood across the garage did not stay celebratory for long. Rival teams across the NASCAR Cup Series garage reportedly started pushing for closer inspection of the number 45 car and the overall 23XI Racing operation. This was not casual chatter. According to multiple sources around the garage area, representatives from several teams have been discussing the possibility of requesting a deeper technical inspection for NASCAR. The conversations are described as serious, coordinated, and pointed directly at understanding how 23XI has found such a massive performance advantage over the rest of the field. One anonymous team executive spoke to ESPN and put it plainly. He said that when someone wins 4 out of the first 6 races, people naturally start looking closer. That quote tells you everything about the current mood. The scrutiny is not coming from one jealous competitor. It is coming from multiple organizations who have looked at the data, compared notes, studied the race footage, and arrived at the same uncomfortable question. How is this team so far ahead? To be completely clear about what that scrutiny actually means, the request for deeper inspection is not an automatic accusation of wrongdoing. In NASCAR, technical inspection covers body lines, aerodynamic specifications, engine compliance, weight distribution, and dozens of other variables that determine whether a car is operating within the rules. When rival teams push for deeper checks, they're asking NASCAR officials to go beyond the standard post-race process and examine every detail with a fine-tooth comb. That is a formal competitive mechanism that exists within the sport. It is not the same as a team being charged with cheating. And this is the critical fact that cannot get lost in the noise. NASCAR already performs standard post-race inspections on winning cars, and no violations have been reported involving Tyler Reddick's car at any point this season. Every time the number 45 has rolled into the inspection area after a win, it has come back clean. There is a significant and meaningful difference between rival teams getting nervous enough to request closer inspection and NASCAR actually finding a technical violation. Right now, the first thing has happened. The second has not. Confidence remains high inside the 2311 organization. People around the team are crediting this success to strong engineering development, well-balanced car setup, and Tyler Reddick's own driving style, especially his ability to manage tire wear on difficult tracks like Darlington. That explanation is not spin. It is consistent with what is visible on the track. These wins do not look like flukes or fortunate circumstances. They look calculated. They look like a driver who understands exactly what his car needs to be fast late in a run, and a team that builds its setup around making that happen. Reddick's tire management, in particular, has been a talking point across the paddock. At Darlington especially, where the racing surface chews through rubber faster than almost anywhere else on the schedule, the ability to preserve tires over long runs is the difference between winning and finishing fifth. Reddick has shown that ability consistently, not just at Darlington, but at Atlanta and elsewhere. That is a developed skill tied to both the driver and the engineering team's ability to set the car up for long-run stability. It does not happen by accident, and it does not happen without serious preparation. Still, NASCAR has always been a sport where the margins are razor thin. Tiny gains can mean everything. And when one team starts stacking wins, rival organizations do not just sit back and clap. They start asking questions. They compare notes. They look at data. They study body lines, setups, pit crew execution, long run speed, and everything else they can think of. That is not a failure of sportsmanship. That is how competition works at the highest level of motorsport. Every team on the grid is looking for the edge, and when someone else appears to have found a bigger one, the natural response is to figure out how and whether it is legal. There is another layer to this story that deserves direct attention. Denny Hamlin is the co-owner of 2311 Racing, and he is also an active, competing Cup Series driver. That dual role has quietly raised eyebrows inside the garage for some time, but Reddick's dominance has brought the conversation to the surface. The concern some teams have expressed is whether Hamlin's position as both an owner and a driver creates an informational or resource-based advantage that other organizations simply do not have access to. It is a legitimate structural question, and it is one that becomes harder to ignore when one of Hamlin's drivers is setting historic pace. The historical company Reddick now keeps makes it impossible to fully separate the present from the past. Dale Earnhardt's 1987 season ended with 11 wins and a championship. Bill Elliott's 1992 season became part of one of the most intense title battles NASCAR has seen in the modern era. Nobody is saying Tyler Reddick is guaranteed to finish with those exact outcomes. But being grouped with those names after 6 races absolutely raises expectations. It raises them inside the garage. It raises them among fans, and it raises them for Reddick himself. There are still some records he cannot touch. He did not match Bill Elliott's mark for most wins through 5 races, and he also cannot break the record for most wins through 7 races, which remains tied to Dale Earnhardt's 1987 season. So it is important to keep the numbers honest, but that does not reduce the weight of where he already stands. What is undeniable is that the inspection pressure itself has become a psychological factor in this season. Can 2311 Racing maintain this level of performance with every team in the garage now studying their every move? Can Reddick stay locked in knowing that rivals are not just racing him, they're also scrutinizing him from every possible angle? Those are questions that have no clean answers yet, but they will get answered at Martinsville, Bristol, and Kansas, the next major tests on the schedule. Those 3 tracks are very different from one another, just like the 4 tracks where Reddick has already won. They will tell the broader story of whether this is a historic opening stretch or the foundation of something even larger. In NASCAR history, dominant teams have always attracted this kind of reaction. It happened with Hendrick Motorsports during their most dominant stretches. It happened with Team Penske and Joe Gibbs Racing when they were setting the pace. The pattern is consistent. When one organization gets far enough ahead of the field, the rest of the garage does not simply try harder, it also starts asking whether the rules are being followed to the letter. That is the culture of the sport. It is competitive, it is aggressive, and it is especially intense when the winning team belongs to an ownership group as high-profile as Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. There is something almost telling about the level of reaction Reddick and 2311 are generating. In NASCAR, nobody starts calling for closer inspection on teams they are not worried about. The fact that competitors are scrambling says everything about how serious Tyler Reddick and 2311 Racing look right now. When the garage mobilizes the way it apparently has since Darlington, that is not dismissal. That is fear dressed up as procedure. Tyler Reddick has shown he can win on super speedways, on intermediates, and on road courses. He has handled pressure. He has responded after less dominant weeks. He has looked dangerous in different conditions. And that combination is exactly what makes a driver feel like a real title contender instead of just the hottest name for the moment. Through 6 races, he has already done something NASCAR has only seen twice before. And whether this becomes a great start or a truly defining season depends entirely on what comes next. The entire championship picture has shifted because of this run. Every other contender in the Cup Series is now chasing a deficit that most did not expect to face this early. Crew chiefs are rebuilding their approaches mid-season. Team executives are re-examining their development timelines. And drivers who expected to be competing at the top of the standings are instead looking at a gap that keeps growing wider. The message from the number 45 car has been the same for 6 straight races. Catch up fast, because 2311 is not waiting. What's happening right now in the NASCAR Cup Series is rare. The numbers are historic. The reactions are real. The tension inside the garage is measurable. And none of it is going to cool down before Martinsville. If anything, it is going to intensify, because that is what happens when a season starts to feel like it might be something more than just another year. Every race from here forward carries extra weight. Every finish from a number 45 car will be watched, analyzed, and debated. And every week that goes by without a violation found only adds to the pressure on the teams chasing him. Tyler Reddick is not just collecting trophies right now. He is reshaping the entire conversation in the NASCAR Cup Series.